Welcome back to another episode of Tales from the Soundcheck podcast. Today we're going to talk about the bass guitar. 4 strings, 5 strings, 6 strings, a billion strings, whatever you play.
The fucking strings.
Yeah. Upright, downright, sideways.
Whamola.
Yeah.
We're joined today by one of our longtime friends and the bass player for the band Burying Point, Josh Boucher. Josh, what the fuck is up, man? It's been forever. How are things?
Things are going, playing out here and there, and just getting back into it after being kind of benched from the metal scene.
Benched.
Sure.
I like the term benched.
Yeah, I played in a couple of bands that were like jam rocky type stuff, so it's good to be back and playing heavy stuff again.
It's cool that you've kept it going, but you've kept it going for quite a while. You were in another band with Paul. Collectively, We've been in bands with Paul and Vienna Morris, for people that don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Great band, awesome to listen to. I think we mentioned Paul a couple episodes ago. He's in a band, Acid Wash, which is a great cover band out of Connecticut. They rip. But yeah, you've kind of just kept it going. You've always played. You've always been the dude that I know that's cycling gear. You're kind of like this dude that we know that skateboards, that cycles skateboards. Everybody knows Fat Joe.
Yep.
Yeah. But like, you're that dude. And I remember even over a decade ago, like you and I making transactions on gear and guitars and shit like that. So it's just cool that you've kept it going completely. Aside from, the other goons in your band that have stopped. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
No, I'm glad I was able to get them to, pick it back up, because we're having a good time. They're having a good time. So it's like we never stopped. Obviously, a lot of things have changed in the last 10 years, but to have these guys around is like just it's like second nature, because we all came up in the same scene 10 years ago. So it's nice to have them around, and we just want to write heavy music, and here we are doing it.
You couldn't explain it any better. I think it's really awesome for me personally, because we all came up in the same group of people. So watching you guys do it again and seeing you guys making it happen the same exact way, but with the new outlets that we have and the new technology, the facets of the internet. Because, let's face it, years and years ago, we were still posting flyers on, venue walls and, barely getting into the whole Facebook, algorithm or whatever it was. We always start with a shotgun question on this show. I'm sure if you've heard it. What's the best part about getting back into it? Is it playing the shows? Is it recording the music? Is it, getting in a couple cars and redoing it, or getting in one van and redoing that whole process?
For me, it's definitely the playing out live. Like my live performance feeds off of the crowd, and if I see people are having a good time, I'm gonna go and have a good time. Recording, that's all fun and games until you mess up and then you get pissed off, and but for me it's definitely the live show. I love having that crowd interaction. I like performing and being a performer, and that's really what it's about, is like you go out, you play these shows, and you're putting on a performance for this crowd. And if you put on a shitty performance, the crowd's not really gonna want more of that. So for me, going back and putting on a performance that makes people want to come see us again, it does it for me. That's my thing.
Hell yeah, man. How, where, or who inspired you to start picking up the bass?
So I picked up the bass when I was 12. And the reason being was my brother was in a garage rock band and he played guitar and I wanted to play music with him. So I picked it up and here we are fucking 22 years later and I'm out here playing shows and he still plays, but he's not as active as he was. It was more of a hobby for him, whereas like this is all I do outside of work and here and there playing some Diablo, but that's a whole nother story.
Sure.
Um, but yeah, man. I mean, my brother was the whole reason I picked up bass in the first place. So if he didn't play guitar, I wouldn't be doing what I do now.
That's awesome. I have a similar story with my dad. He was a guitar player, so he's the one that inspired me originally to start picking up and playing guitar, music, all that stuff. So that's really cool. Especially like there's something about like having a familial bond with music. My grandmother was a really awesome piano player. Like, yeah, it runs in the family a little, just a little bit.
Yeah, and I noticed that with like a lot of musicians that I've talked to, it's like either they had like a sibling that played, or like a grandparent, or a
Hmm.
parent, or an aunt and uncle, someone in the family that, or like someone that was close to them, played, and they're like, well, I want to be like that, and so then they pick it up, and it's there's something to be said about like having that sort of relationship with someone to just be like, yeah, this is I want to be like them when I get older.
Yeah, absolutely. There's just something about like the joy you share with another human being when you're like, whether you're writing something or you're two people just trying to learn a song together and you just fucking nail it. And like, yeah, it's awesome.
Oh man, there's nothing like two people. Like when I said with Metis Remedy, when Steve and I first wrote those songs, before we even met Brett, before we even had a singer, and with Tabit, on a PA speaker coming,
Respect.
yeah, a Tabit coming through a PA speaker on a computer with just drums and us playing it, and we actually nailed it between bass and guitar. That sounds so archaic and so just wonky, but we were like, oh my god, this is a song. And the fact that the two of us just out of high school were able to bring a song to other people, which created a project in a band that a few people still talk about. And that's a good feeling. For me, it was a neighbor that actually had a bass and was letting me jam with it, but I was playing with guitar and stuff, and I really liked it. But bass was cool. And then I met this dude named Garrett. Shout out this guy Garrett. He was in a band called By Accident in Connecticut. They were like just a rock band, and they were around over a decade ago. But
Mhm.
this dude, he works for like Marvel now and stuff. He's like
Oh,
he
wow.
does like he does like
That's rad.
uh last time I talked to him, he does like location scouting or something like that for Marvel. Uh, but
Oh, for
his
like the
brother,
films.
yeah.
Oh, wow. That's
Uh,
rad.
yeah, I'll tell you the locations that he actually did out here in San Diego after.
Hmm.
Uh, but his brother was a bass player, and I remember us playing like just bass, and he was like, "I'm gonna film it." We'd make like music videos, and that's just how that became something. And then all of a sudden, I was just like, you know what, I'm gonna play bass, and I had one, and met a few of the people that I played with, and it's been uh it's been 4 or 5, sometimes 6 strings ever since.
I hear that. Uh, I remember the first time I got a bass. Well, I should say my brother got a bass, and I played it way more than he did. And my brother plays guitar as well, and we were looking into getting a bass. So when we were jamming together, we really liked. Well, I still do, and so does he. We're both really big fans of Tool, and so needed to get a bass. But it's really funny. We both decided to just get a 5-string, and that's what I learned to play bass on. I just omitted the 4 strings. I was like, 5 is better.
Dude, Justin Chancellor is fucking nasty.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, he is. I
he's
love it. His whole rig is amazing.
oh man, when I saw Tool, I saw Tool with Mike at Mohegan Sun like over 10 years ago,
Was
and
that 2006?
no, it was a little bit late. It was a little bit later than that, maybe
Okay.
2009 or 10.
Okay.
No, it might have been 2011. But it was at Mohegan Sun, and I was on the floor because his ex-girlfriend had gotten us floor seats, and it was like 12th row, dude. It was the craziest shit.
Oh,
And I was just
wow.
staring at this dude's rig, and they played all the hits, and I was just like, oh my God, this is the first time I've seen Tool, and it's probably the only time I'm ever gonna see Tool. So it was such a dope experience. Bass has always captivated me. First bass you've ever owned, what is it? And the favorite bass you've ever owned might be something you're playing currently.
So, the very first bass I ever got was an Ibanez GSR 200 with
Yep.
the split pickup and the single coil pickup, and I played that for a while. Actually, Dave, I let Evan Schuler borrow that bass, and he left it at someone's house.
Oh my
So
goodness.
I haven't seen that in years. But that was my first bass. My favorite bass I've ever owned. I mean, I have a couple that I've owned that I love, but the two that I have right now, um, I've actually owned in the past, and I made it a point to get them again because I missed having them. So I have an Ibanez SR 1405 premium. It's a 5-string. It's got Nordstrom big single pickups in it, and I had that same bass like 7 years ago, and I had traded it for guitars, and I've missed it ever since. And I found one recently, and I was like, that's the bass. So I got it, and it plays just as I remember. It's like butter. My other bass is in Ibanez BTB 1405 in the same color. It has the Nordstrom big singles in it as well. It's just neck through, and it's a BTB body style instead of the SR body style. But I actually owned this one previously. I sold it to a guy down in South Carolina, I think, like a year and a half ago. And like a couple months ago, I messaged him like, "Hey, dude, if you decide to get rid of this, let me know. I'll buy it back from you." And I think it was probably like a month ago. He messaged me back and was like, "Hey, I'm ready to sell this back to you. It's just as you had it. You sold it to me." I was like, "All right, how much you want?" I paid him. Then he sent it to me, and I've been using that for the last couple of shows. Um, and it sounds huge.
The pickups in those BTBs are no joke. They have such good low end.
Yeah, I've been using. I use like Nordstrom big singles exclusively, only because like they have so much beef, but they also have so much mid range to them, where I could dial it out and still have it be prominent in my tone. Um, a lot of the BTBs and a lot of the SRs, even like the mid range level, they have the Bartolini MK1s,
Yep.
and
Yep.
for the life of me, I cannot dial those in to save my life. They just
Interesting.
always sound muddy to me. and I know so many people who love them. But for me, it's I the Nordstrom has that tone that I want in a pickup, and it just works with my rig so well. And I'm able to dial it in and have a nice, articulate, clean yet gritty tone that I like envision. Uh,
Mm.
they work for me.
It's interesting too because I believe my base has MK1s.
You have the SR505, right?
Yeah, MK1 then.
Yeah,
Um,
MK1.
I've never had an issue with those pickups. Maybe it's just the setup. It could just be the setup style, too.
It could be.
You're very big on a company that I started with when I was starting to build rigs up, Galleon Kruger. So
Mm.
Yeah,
like,
I love Galleon Kruger.
dude, it's so good. I was at Guitar Center the other day and they had a third, fourth generation 400 RB or something like that.
Mm.
Oh,
And I was like, dude, I sold a first generation 400 RB years ago. That's what I started with, and
mm,
I was like, I kicked myself in the face for selling that thing off because I would love to have had that back. I had like the rail system that I bought for it that you
yep.
bolt onto it, and it was such a cool head. It wasn't very powerful, but it sounded great. And I'm like, nah, man, do I want another one? But my rig has not changed since
The Forsaken Days.
yeah, I still have the Tech 21 and
Yep.
uh preamp power amp setup, and it's still good, but I'd love to upgrade. But yeah, dude, the MK1s, yeah, it's there's many variables, like you have tuning,
There is.
uh
Yep.
strings,
Tuning. Yep.
cables, it's anything, and then on top of the amp and the setup, the cab,
Yep.
all that other stuff. But I do understand people's specifics with pickups because pickups are a big
Yeah.
Especially for bass, they can really, oh,
make
gosh,
or break,
if
dude.
Oh yeah.
yeah, pretty much. I mean, you could say the same with guitar pickups, but if you're playing like metal and stuff like that, it's not. And this is just me. I know people have feelings about pickups, especially in the guitar world, but like for me, like don't get me wrong, I have preferred pickups. I'm not huge on active pickups for guitar, but necessity for a bass, at least for me.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
Mm.
but
I like active pickups on a bass for
yeah,
sure.
yeah, yeah. There's just something about the natural compression that you get out of those.
So like with my basses, they have the active passive switch on them.
Sure, my Fender has that.
I love it. So like I actually primarily play in passive mode.
Oh, interesting.
Yep.
I knew he would.
The only time I ever switch it to active is if like the room sound is kind of muddy, and then
Yeah.
I could dial in like a little bit of mids or a little bit of treble. But
Mhm.
for the most part, I always keep mine on passive mode.
Fair enough. I mean,
Makes
like
sense.
when I was playing in Arc, like we were playing in drop G. So like
Yep.
for my setup, it was basically like, well, I don't really need low end. It's more so I would just make it gritty as possible so it's
Yep.
sit in the mix and at least cut through, and it worked. I'd leave it like that, and like the active pickups definitely helped.
What was the
Yeah.
term that we had? The grindier, the better, right?
Yep,
Yep.
pretty much. I still have my rig technically on my desk. I have a Santamp RBI. I love this
Mm,
thing.
yep.
Beautiful, beautiful preamp, dude.
We've all had that.
Yeah, I still have the
I never
RPM.
got I never got rid of it, and I'm still I think it's amazing how much more expensive they are now.
Yeah, they're up there now. I actually, when Burying Point first started, my rig was a Sans Amp RBI into a power amp,
Yep, yep.
and
It's a solid setup.
yeah, it works. Um, and then I ended up getting rid of it. I went and got the Galleon Kruger because
Mm,
it was a brand that I've wanted to invest in,
sure.
and I was like, if I don't do this now, I'm never going to. And I'm really happy I did, because
Yeah.
like I dial in a little bit of the the onboard overdrive. I don't have to use any pedals.
Yep.
I get a nice little crisp tone, and it's still a little bit overdriven, and it fits with the music, you know.
Yeah, that was my first rig. I had I forget what model the head was, but it was a GK, and I had a GK 810 with the gold
The
the
gold
gold
line.
tones. Yeah, yeah. I don't know what it was, but like it would, because the gold cones or something in those speakers, it made it sound more clicky. I miss
They're
that
aluminum.
fucking thing. Really?
Yeah, they're aluminum.
That's funny.
That's why.
You hear that, Galley
Yeah,
and Kruger?
Because
Sponsor
like
all three of us.
yeah, please.
I actually just bought another Galleon Kruger head. I bought an older 1000 RB.
Oh,
Nice.
such a good head, dude.
Yeah,
Yeah,
It's a really, really good head. Very, 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 very versatile.
favorite or plural bass player if you can. If it's not a singular bass player, we can do multiple.
I have several, and none of my playing technique comes from any of them.
Sure.
Um,
Sure.
Obviously, being a middle schooler in the early 2000s, Ryan Martini,
Oh
right
god.
off the bat.
Yep.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Phenomenal bass player. His technique is amazing. I've only recently started trying to play like that, to add it into my style, but it's probably never going to happen. Um, Justin Chancellor,
Yeah.
Mhm.
amazing bass lines for Tool. Fieldy
I
in the
was just
early
gonna say
2000s.
Fieldy, dude.
He had that clicky bass tone that you didn't hear really. Also, another Ibanez player.
Have you ever owned a K5? Because
I have not.
I've always looked for one of those.
I've thought about it so many times, and
Same.
I'm like, I know what I like, and this has, you know, I think the newer ones have EMGs, but the older ones have the Ibanez ADX pickups, which were like their active
Yeah.
pickups.
Mm.
But like, I just never did, because I couldn't justify the price tag at the time.
Sure.
Other bass players that I that are my favorites, Olivier Pinard from Cryptopsy and Cattle Decapitation.
Hmm.
He's just a
Yep.
really nice dude, and he's a phenomenal bass player. Uh, Alex Webster, Cannibal Corpse,
Yeah.
amazing bass player. And my left field, Victor Wooten.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
That's
Victor
that's
Wooten, yeah.
that's a given.
The way he looks at music, he he doesn't see like theory. Like, he knows theory is supposed to be there, but he also knows that like theory isn't going to move the crowd. It's feel.
Absolutely. I love that video of him just being like, who cares about theory? Just,
Yeah, he's like,
just walk it.
here I am playing wrong notes,
Yeah.
and they groove with the music, and I'm like, this fucking guy, he's amazing.
Yep.
Just even watching him play is like
Yeah.
phenomenal, because he makes it look so fucking easy.
He's a buttery player.
Oh,
He's
yeah,
somebody I would love to see live.
Same.
Yeah, dude, there's a lot of good bass players. There's a lot
There
of
are.
there's a lot of mediocre bass players like myself. So
Same.
you know, there's iconic bass players that, maybe because they died, like, like Paul Gray. Like
Yeah.
we
Cliff.
yeah, Cliff Burton. But Cliff Burton and Paul Gray were phenomenal musicians. We cannot take that away from them.
Absolutely not.
What's the name of the dude from Limp Bizkit? Fucking
Oh,
rips.
Peanut.
No, that's 311.
Oh, you're right.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
he's,
Peanut
he's
too.
a, he's a great fucking bass player too, though.
Yeah,
Dude,
absolutely.
a lot of those new metal bands.
He's
were
a
phenomenal.
sleeper bassist, or
He is.
who is it? I forget the gentleman's name, but the original bass player for Incubus was a fucking monster.
Sam Rivers and Limp Bizkit.
Okay,
Yeah.
Sam.
Dude,
That's
dude
right.
rips.
He was married to somebody in the WWE, if I remember.
Was he?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Oh shit. Limp Bizkit's been around. Oof,
They've been
I'm
around.
64.
Dude, but
Jeez
like
Louise.
some of I know, like, just to throw a couple more names out of the hat, like one of my favorites was definitely like Martin Mendez from Opeth. My
Oh,
Mm.
yep.
Oh yeah,
God,
very good bass player.
he's a pocket player, but like he is
He
in
is.
there. His technique is so smooth. Like
Have
I
you listened to his playing on like the recent stuff?
yes, it's
It's
amazing.
so jazzy.
Yeah, I love it. He must be so happy.
Oh yeah, dude. I, from what I understand, like a lot of like the newer stuff is his influence.
I don't doubt it. Him, obviously Ryan from Mudvayne.
Mm.
Uh, also, like more currently for me would be like Jared Smith from Archspire.
Okay.
Absolute monster.
Yeah, he is.
Who's the band with the two bass players? Forgive me.
The
The
Omni-
Omnific.
yeah.
Yes. Yes. Fucking dude. So one thing that you and I had a conversation about, we were talking about certain certain basses recently. Um, high end basses. You have big companies like Kiesel, Stramberg, Dingwall, all these high end basses that are
Mm.
$5,000+ for an instrument. And I know Ibanez can get pretty pricey. You and I had a conversation about price versus sound, and it was pretty interesting. It wasn't eye opening, but it was like the get what you pay for thing is not
Yeah.
always true.
It's
Yeah.
not.
Yeah, I've owned a lot of that stuff. Um, I've owned custom Kiesels that kind of played like garbage. I've owned,
I've heard horror stories about their custom shop.
yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say
None.
anything negative about them, but
I'll also preface that was many years ago. I don't know how their
yeah.
operation is now because I've played some Kiesel guitars off the wall that play tremendously.
Oh yeah,
You know,
I've
so
played
like,
guitars that play great, but
yeah,
like as far as basses, like I've owned um, a couple back when they were Carvin,
yeah,
that played pretty good.
Carbon's
But then
good.
I've owned Kiesel Vaders
Hmm.
that were like meh. I mean, I'm also not the biggest fan of headstocks, but like
Sure,
you know, it, they're one of those companies that you either like them or you don't.
sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Fair.
I've played custom Dingwalls. I've owned combustions. Not yeah. I've owned a combustion. I've owned a couple of the NGs,
Wow.
the import models, and I've owned a few of the Canadian afterburners.
Hmm.
And there's definitely a difference between playing um, like an import model like the NG versus a domestic model like the afterburner.
Hmm.
For me personally, like the afterburners were great, um, but for a fraction of the price, I get the same tone that I had playing those from my Ibanez's.
Correct.
Because like I owned a Dingwall 4 string custom that was $7,500,
Wow.
and and
It's a fucking car.
yeah, pretty much. Like it was a great bass. It sounded great. It played great. But then I get the same feel and the same tone that I had before from the Ibanez's that I play now. So it's like a $1,200 Ibanez is easier to replace than a $7,500 Dingwall.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a lot more to me, not only economical, but it's just like, yeah, like if you have the money and you can afford that and you love this instrument, that's awesome. Like I love expensive, like high end stuff, but at the same time, that's not my background. I don't have a lot of money, so I have to live within my means, like most of us do, and we try to find the
Yeah,
thing that sounds the best within our means. And most of
absolutely.
the time, for me, like definitely Ibanez. I'm weird when it comes to basses, so I either like Fender style necks, like the chunkier ones. I have
Yep.
a Fender Active V Jazz bass. Love that
Nice.
thing.
Nice.
And yeah, that thing is super awesome. But
I want one
then
of those so bad.
I like the aspect of having the chonkier neck because it's kind of nice. But then like I also love the profile of an Ibanez just because it's so familiar.
It's sleek too.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
Plays so fast.
Mhm.
Ibanez necks on bass, even a 5-string, plays so comfortable. If you're a guitar player and you're transitioning to bass, or you're just playing a bass, an
Yeah.
Ibanez 5-string at regular scale is like
Even their
it's so smooth.
like the regular Sound Gear 6 that we sell at my store, like that thing's a very nice playing instrument for being a whole like $400.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, and you can mod them too. I mean, you can
Oh yeah.
change
Yeah,
anything you want up.
you know, I'm huge into modding stuff, so that's kind of my thing. But like, and, you know, and I mean that's on the low end. I mean, like, pay a few $1,000s, you're gonna get something amazing.
Yep. Absolutely. And that was also part of like why I went back to Ibanez too from playing the Dingwalls. Um, is like I needed money, so what's the first thing I'm going to get rid of? The expensive things that I could get rid of and get the most money from.
Mm-hmm.
And those were the Dingwalls. And they sold relatively quick because everyone wants Dingwalls, and Dingwalls got like a 2-year waiting. So it's like, okay, this is going to get me fast money. I could at least get what I paid for them back, and I could use a fraction of that money to get, something that I know sounds good and plays good, and I did just that, and it just happens to be the basses that I've loved and regretted getting rid of. So
And
I've had a chance to get back to those.
that's great. And still have money for pizza and wings. So
That's
Yeah,
right.
and pay my bills.
and pay your bills. Yeah.
Those come
Yeah.
first.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I
Um,
mean, you're talking about two $7,000 bases. I mean, if
yeah,
you know, that's a chunk of change. And
Yeah.
then if you can achieve the same sound, I mean, you can't go
absolutely.
wrong with Ibanez.
No,
But
you can't.
Ibanez also sponsor us,
Hit us
the
up.
three of us. Yeah, hit us
I
up.
wish. I've been as in GK gang all day.
Yeah,
Oh,
I'd go back to it. I'd go back to GK.
I would.
You're there.
I am.
tell us a little bit about like maybe some of your past projects and what it's been like so far with Bear.
So I've had a lot of past projects.
Sure,
um,
sure. We all have. We
the,
all have.
the more notable ones, like with Paul, obviously I was in Van Morris. That went a while. Um, we played tons of shows out of state and in state, and we had a pretty decent following. And then we kind of changed the music, and there was some, you know, inner disputes. So we all kind of went our own way. Um, but before that, and Dave was a part of this too. Before me, we were in a band called When All Was Lost.
Yeah.
Which was like it was it was a metalcore band, but that was one of the most fun bands I was in.
Dude,
With
that
those
band
guys.
was a lot of fun. I'm gonna have Stevie on, and Paul are both really interested in coming on. I haven't talked to Eric or Jay yet, but it would be awesome to have the whole group. Mike would be awesome to have on. The best part about that band when I was in it was Mike's lyrical content and song names were all Brad Pitt's
Yep.
movies.
Yeah, that first EP you guys had was
Yeah.
was great, and that was part of the reason. Like I was in some band. I think we were called the Bella Homicide, and it was just like a little garage death metal band, and I had seen the advertisement for the bass player position for When All Is Lost, and I was like, I'm gonna try out for this band because I love metalcore. I love all these bands that you guys are listing in your influences, and we'll go from there. So I went and like I had heard the stuff previous that like you guys had recorded, and then I heard the newer stuff, and I was like, okay, yeah, I'm in.
Fair.
But when that band broke up, like it was probably like 6 months between, um, and then Paul had started doing. He had put together Venom Morris, so I just went and auditioned for them, having um, that prior experience with Paul, and that had just worked out. And both those bands with Paul were definitely fun. Like he pushed my playing to new limits, which was great. Because he's such a phenomenal guitar player.
Yeah, I agree. He pushed me to my limit.
Yeah, he does that.
It's always great to have somebody like that around that you can bounce off of and be like, oh, gotta catch up.
Yep.
And he's hard, and he's a perfectionist too, which
He
is
is.
great. If you're recording with him and you fuck up, you fucked up, and you got to
Yeah.
do it all over again. So, but it's respectable because you're not making a song or recording a product to sound like shit.
Yeah,
So.
definitely. But yeah. So there were those bands. I had another project with Burying Point's vocalist Freddie. We did a project called Deer Slug, and
I remember Deer Slug.
That kind of fizzled out. We put out like one single and had like one practice, and then it went MIA. But that was some fun, heavy stuff, and people were digging that. And I feel bad because I feel like I kind of disappointed some of the people that were looking for more of that. But now here we are with Bearing Point, and we're just doing heavy stuff.
It's got to be really awesome to play like 3 shows in like a week and a half.
Oh yeah, I don't think I've ever done that before.
Really?
Yeah.
I told John the other day, and I was like, John, you played 2 shows in 1 week, and then I looked at the calendar, and I was like, 3 shows in 2 weeks. I was like, when was the last time you did that? 2010?
Yeah. No, all my shows used to be spaced out. Like I was always the one who wanted to do like touring, and it never happened because everyone else just wanted to play shows here and there. And I'm like, okay, well, this is how this is gonna go. But then all you guys went and did touring, and I'm like, I'm jealous. I won't lie, I'm jealous.
It wasn't an easy process.
No,
it was
never
not
easy. I went on one tour, and it wasn't even to play; it was to do merch, and that was for years since the storm.
Hey, I would do that again in a heartbeat.
I would do that again in a heartbeat. I love those guys, man.
Merch is a solid gig, man.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I miss that band.
Merch, teching, any of that stuff.
Yeah,
I would love to be a part of the production.
Once I go to this school and stuff, like I've dabbled with the idea of becoming a guitar tech. That'd be a lot of fun.
That'd be sick.
Yeah, that would be probably the.
I know a couple people that have some connections.
Oh, of course you do. Of course you do. You played music. You definitely got some connections to do some stuff like that.
No, particularly guys that are still working like back end of stuff. So like that would be cool.
We've got a sound engineer for a venue coming on pretty soon, so we're pretty stoked to talk to him.
Hell yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah,
that's like a whole nother like area of music that you don't normally hear about, because you always hear from like musicians, but you never hear from like the actual sound guys.
The production,
yeah, that's a whole other thing, especially from doing years of just like home recording and getting into mixing and stuff live. I've done live sound in the past, but like, yeah, it's a whole other monster, and it depends on the room you're in.
Oh yeah,
it depends on the band that's on the stage too. You never know.
There's so many variables.
Bust out the Line 6 combo amps, man.
Oh, the Spider.
Oh yeah. Let me get a direct line from that buzzy piece of shit. Let me put this on insane mode. Yep, there it is.
As everybody can tell, we do not want to be sponsored by Line 6. No, I'm just kidding. I'll take Line 6 merchandise.
No,
Anything,
dude.
anything you give me,
I love
I'll
Line
take all of
6,
it.
and they have redeemed the spider sense, so, like,
Yeah.
it's all good. Those old ones were just like, whew. There was a lot of them at shows.
Yeah, the modulation is solid state in some of the computer programming with
They
those
got it
amps.
dialed in after a while.
Yeah, it took a bit. It took a bit. The first couple series of those amps sounded like donkey dick, but
Yep.
people used them because they were affordable and they were versatile. You could do a lot of things with them.
I had the Spider too.
Yeah,
Mm.
I've got a lot of recordings from some bands. Colin and I were in a band together where the Spider 2 was the amp of choice for both guitar players. So, also Josh's guitar player right now is one of those that really enjoyed it. But hey, the band was fun. The amp worked. They were inexpensive, and you could do cleans. You could get this giant fucking pedal board that you didn't need. But yeah. But Bearing Point, dude, you guys have played a couple shows recently. You guys have had a really good reception. You guys are playing a show tomorrow night. This episode won't be out until, I believe, the first week of August. Do you have any shows coming up? August, September? Anything you can disclose? Any new merchandise, singles?
We do have the show coming up tomorrow. It's pretty much a local showcase. A lot of local like death metal and just kind of bar metal. But then August 5th, we're gonna be at the Underground with our buddies in Slugs, also out of Bristol. They're heavy, they're fun, they're nice dudes. But we're playing with Cell, Chamber, and Orthodox.
Hell yeah.
Beautiful.
And that's going to be a fucking banger of a show, and I can't wait because I love seeing Orthodox live. They're one of those bands that are fucking amazing live. And you have to see them because seeing them live is so much different than just listening to them. It's a different experience.
That's sick. This episode comes out on the 4th. So anybody that's listening to this today for this episode, if you're in Connecticut, that's at the Webster Underground, right?
Yep.
All right. Webster Underground, Hartford, Connecticut, August 5th, one day after this comes out. Be there. Get a bloody nose. Jump in a pit. Do what you got to do. Josh, I'm stoked that we finally got to line this up. And it's been a couple weeks coming. Thank you for coming on, giving us your time, and shooting some shit with us, man.
Absolutely. I'll talk music gear all day, every day. That's
dude, it's been a blast.
Yeah,
it's been a fucking blast having you on. One of the cool things about this podcast is just getting to shoot the shit with old buddies and just talk about gear and bullshit. And we're just trying to keep this cool and thank you so much for your time and coming on and just chilling with us.
Absolutely, guys. I'm so glad it worked out.
Hell yeah.
Thanks again for tuning in for another episode of Tales from the Soundcheck podcast. Follow us on Instagram at Tales from the Soundcheck podcast and listen on Spotify where you can follow and rate the show.
Don't forget to hit that little bell and subscribe to our YouTube channel for full episodes and future exclusive clips.
If you have any comments, want to chat with us on the show, or have your band featured, please DM us or email us at talesfromthesoundcheckpodcast@gmail.com.